This video will show you how to replace the throttle body on a Mitsubishi Lancer with a 2.4-liter engine. This will be located along the driver's side of your engine. Let's get into it. Let's start removing the upper engine cover first by removing two 10mm bolts. Now we're making our way over towards the throttle body. We have our inlet tube. We're going to dislodge this. Now for this inlet tube, we're going to start at the breather hose that leads over towards the valve cover. Squeeze the clamp and we'll slide this hose out of place. I'm using some pliers. If you find the hose is stuck in place, you can use an angled hose pick. Once you have your hose disconnected, give it a quick squeeze, make sure it's soft and pliable. Now the inlet tube is held to the air filter housing with a clamp right up along here. We'll be using a 10mm to loosen the clamp enough that we could carefully pull this away from the air filter housing. On the other side of the tube, you have the same exact thing, holding it to your throttle body. Let's make our way down to the next piece of hardware. Let's get this lower one down here, just past the transmission dipstick. Let's take hold of that tube. Just going to give it a twist. Work this off of there, just a quick inspection of that, make sure it's not cracked in any way. Now I've removed my transmission dipstick and installed a protective plug so we have a clear view of where our electrical connector is on the throttle body itself. So we're starting with that electrical connector. It has a locking tab on the forward side. Just go ahead and squeeze that in and we'll lift this up and out of place. Now once you do have it disconnected, a quick inspection for corrosion, of course. We'll set that aside. Now this is attached to a bracket. We're not going to dislodge it from the bracket. We can remove the entire bracket with the other connector from the throttle body itself. Prior to doing that, there's a rubber hose that goes along this plastic clip. We're going to carefully dislodge it and then we'll continue on to that 10mm bolt. Just go ahead and carefully pull that right up and out of there. Now up in this corner is where the 10mm bolt is for this entire bracket. Once we have it dislodged, we'll try to pull this aside. That's what your throttle body bolts look like. Now we're making our way over towards the other side of the throttle body. Now we do have a wiring harness that goes across a bracket, but we're leaving that wiring harness on the metal bracket. We can't dislodge the bracket yet because the bolt is tucked in and behind this coolant hose. So we're going to remove the coolant hose from the throttle body. Keep in mind there will be coolant inside this area. We want to have a collection receptacle underneath the vehicle just in case any fluid makes its way down. But to help prevent that, we're going to be using some hose pliers, and we'll also use a small plug on the throttle body side. Prior to removing that coolant hose, we want to make sure we make our way over towards where the coolant cap is. We'll make sure it's cool to the touch, obviously it should be. We're going to carefully open this counterclockwise, pressing down and lifting up and away from our face. We just want to make sure there's no pressure in the cooling system. After that, we can just go ahead and close this back up again. We'll use the hose pliers to gently crimp this. We'll use some pliers for the clamp. While squeezing that in, we'll slide the hose out of place and then cap that throttle body. So I have my hose crimpers. I'm going to go on the far side of this wire. Just try to bring this in here. Apply light pressure on that hose. We don't want to cause any damage. We just want to restrict fluid flow. Now we'll go ahead and squeeze that clamp and remove the hose from the throttle body. Keep in mind there could be coolant in this area. We have our collection receptacle under here. Slide that hose off of there. Install my plug. Now just a quick inspection of our hose. We'll set that aside. We do not want to drain any more coolant than we have to. Now we'll be using a 12mm for the bracket mounting bolt. See it right back here. Okay. There's our mounting bolt. Now we have 2 bolts holding this bracket in place to the throttle body. Those are also the bolts that hold the throttle body in place, so we can remove those. We'll continue on to the last mounting bolt for the throttle body afterward. Now we should be able to shift that bracket. There we are. We have our last bolt over in this corner for the throttle body itself. Once we have that dislodged, we're going to attempt to slide this throttle body over towards the front of the vehicle underneath our upper radiator hose. We just need it out of the way so we can gain access in that area. Take hold of that throttle body. Now we do still have a coolant hose attached to this. Continuing on, we need to make sure no miscellaneous debris falls inside the air intake system. I'm going to use a clean rag. We'll go ahead and give this a quick wipe, making sure there's nothing in there, and then we're going to protect the area prior to continuing on any further. Now I have my clean rag, no detergent, just a quick wipe. Now I'm going to protect the area. Now that we have the throttle body dislodged, we have access to our next coolant hose. We're going to squeeze the 3 ears on the clamp to dislodge this from the throttle body. Of course, we do want to make sure we use some hose pliers on that hose to restrict the coolant. I'm just going to use some long nose pliers for this. Slide that down a little bit further here. We've got our angled hose pick. I'm just going to attempt to make my way around, break it free. There we are. A little bit of coolant comes out of that. And there it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, we always want to make sure we clean the mating surface. We're paying attention down in this area. We're going to make sure that we clean up the seal that's on the intake itself. For this, I'm just going to give it a quick wipe with a clean rag. I'm not using any type of detergent or oils. There we are. We'll make sure that there's nothing along this mating surface here. Let's get ready to install our throttle body. Now, as far as the throttle body is concerned, we are going to be hooking up one of our coolant hoses first before we get this in place. I like to have a plug directly on the opposite side. That's going to protect any coolant from making its way out once we do have that in place. Start bringing this down. Slide this on here. Now that I have that slid back up into the original position, it's time for the clamp. That clamp is also going to go into its original position. Use my pliers here. Now, when installing any of your clamps, you of course do want to make sure you're not at the very end of the hose. You need to be able to see hose on both sides of the clamp. Now at this point, I'll remove my hose pliers from this hose since I have the opposite tube already plugged. Before we get our throttle body in place, let's make sure that we remove the plug from inside of the intake here. We don't want anything inside of there. We'll double check around the mounting area just to confirm that no miscellaneous debris has fallen in or around. Now we can start sliding our throttle body in place. I'm lifting up on the rearward bracket. Now I'm trying to align my mounting bolt ports here. We'll start in our 2 mounting bolts along the inboard side or the rearward side first. Now that I have both of those started in, we're leaving them loose. Let's continue on along the forward side. We have another bracket here. This is going to go right into this corner of the throttle body. Now at this point, we're going to take the mounting bolt, slide it through this bracket, through the throttle body, and into the intake. All right, that one started in. Next one. This is the only bolt that does not have a bracket. They're all started in. Let's go ahead and snug them up in a crisscross manner. Once they're snug, we're going to torque them to 84 inch-pounds. That one. Now that rearward bracket does still have one more 12mm headed mounting bolt that needs to be installed. It's going to go right behind this area here, underneath our wiring harness. Okay, right there's bottomed out. We're just going to take that a tiny bit further. We do want to make sure that bracket's secured properly. It's time for our coolant hose. Keep in mind, when you do remove your protective plug from the throttle body, coolant might make its way out of there. We'll try to be quick about this. A little bit of coolant. We'll make sure we slide that hose up into the proper position. I have it pressed on there as far as possible. Let's make sure we install the clamp. We want to see hose on both sides of that clamp. We'll just give that a little tug to confirm it's secured and remove our hose pliers. Double check to make sure you don't see any coolant leaking from this area, and let's continue on over along this area next. Now we remember that we dislodged the hose from this plastic bracket. Just go ahead and line it up and slide that in. It's fairly simple. We do have an electrical connector next for that throttle body. The locking tab faces towards the front of the vehicle. Line it up and press it on. Audible click, we'll give it a tug. Now prior to installing our air inlet tube across the top of this area, it's going to be a little bit difficult to clean the coolant, so we're going to do that next. Obviously, we don't want anything making its way inside of the throttle body, which might lead into the engine. We're going to protect that area again. I'm just using a clean rag. I'm not pressing on the valve inside of the throttle body. That's extremely important. Now, continuing on, I'm going to clean this using compressed air, paying close attention around all of my coolant hoses. Got that cleaned down. Get this out of here. Just double check, make sure nothing's inside of that throttle body. Now we can install our air inlet tube. This upper port is going to lead up towards the valve cover hose. Let's start down at the throttle body. We'll press this up against the throttle body as far as possible. Prior to tightening the clamp, let's make sure that we also adjust it so it can make its way up to that upper air filter housing as well. Pressing that on as far as possible. We'll flex this. That slides on. Let's continue on to our two clamps. Make sure they're nice and snug. You can do whichever one you want first. I'm just going to start with the top. Now you don't want to over tighten the clamp. You just need to make sure that your hose is properly secured. You don't want any dirty or unmetered air making its way into the engine. Let's continue on down to the lower clamp as well. This on here. Okay. Double check, make sure that's tight. Now we're making our way up to this area. Let's get that hose in place. Squeeze the clamp. Now, since I did remove my transmission dipstick and plug the tube, I'm removing the plug and installing my dipstick. Now it's time for our forward engine cover. Looking along the bottom of this, we have one locating tab. That locating tab will go into this circular port right in the center of the intake manifold. Let's line this up, slide it in, align the mounting bolt ports, start those in and snug them up. Double check to make sure that's secured. Now we're focusing on topping off our coolant. Now to fill the cooling system, there's several different ways of doing so. You might have a specialty tool or something as basic as a coolant funnel. Either way, we're going to carefully open up our coolant cap. I'm using the funnel. We'll remove our small plunger. Continuing on, you want to use the manufacturer-specific coolant to top off the coolant. Once you find that there's no more air making its way up and out of the system, go ahead and reinstall the plunger, remove the funnel, and then reinstall the coolant cap. I'll be using universal coolant for this. Now I'm just going to exercise the two upper hoses here. That should help work out any air that might be trapped inside of these hoses. A tech tip, prior to removing your funnel, you're going to want to squeeze on your upper radiator hose. Once you're squeezing on that, you can install the plunger. Carefully pull this up and off of here, and that's going to help us prevent losing any coolant. Let's reinstall that cap. Turn it clockwise until it's completely locked in. Okay, friend, we finished the installation of our vehicle's throttle body. Now at this point, you're going to want to start and run the vehicle. If you find that you have a running condition, you might have to do a relearn procedure, and that's typically done with a scan tool. Aside from that, you want to take your vehicle for a road test and check for any coolant leaks. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.